And former communications director for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. Also joining us, Tim Miller, former communications director for Jeb Bush's 2016 campaign, a contributor to The Bulwark, and the political director for Republican Voters Against Trump, and Steve Schmitzbach, political strategist, Lincoln Project co-founder, my longtime friend. Steve Schmidt, I got to hear what's on your mind about all this.
Well, this was a monumental month in the history of the country. Democracy is fueled by faith and belief by the people in the legitimacy of the system. And our system requires both sides in the competition of ideas that's decided in elections. It requires both sides to be willing to lose an election. And if you have one side who is no longer willing to lose an election and won't represent the popular will of the American people, then what you have on American soil is an autocratic political party. And so we have some Republican senators, none of whom covered themselves with glory in any of this, with the exception of Mitt Romney over these last couple of years. At least we have 6 of them who hold on to the basic tenets of American democracy behind the lines of the autocratic movement, right? Really a last defense, I suppose, in the Republican Party. And then all of the rest of us on the other side of that line, from AOC and Bernie Sanders to the Lincoln Project and Tim Miller and all of the folks that stood with Joe Biden, whose careers have been as conservatives or Republicans, right? American politics realigned this month. We're now one election away in this country from losing our democracy because one party doesn't believe in it. We saw the poisoning of American democracy drip by drip, drop by drop this month until we saw 82% of Republicans said, hey, this is illegitimate. And once you reach that critical mass, you're in a lot of trouble as a society and in a country. And this is going to be the defining political fight, I suspect, over the balance of all of our lifetimes. But truly a historic month, and not one for the good, in the middle of a profound calamity. And Trump's vandalism of this country, its institutions, has been profound, and it will be damaging for a long time to come.
Steve, I understand, I think at this point, why Trump does what he does, from people like Tim O'Brien and his niece who've spoken out. I do not understand how elected Republicans like Mitch McConnell and even right-wing hosts like Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh do not say today, there's a line that can't be crossed, and that's violence.
That line is in the rearview mirror, Nicole. They crossed it. They crossed the Rubicon. They crossed it in the month of November. We cannot be fantastical in wishing that what has happened has not happened. In our thinking, it has happened. We've watched it play out. We've watched Trump and his loony attorneys. We've watched the declarations of fraud. We've seen United States senators, members of the House of Representatives. They all know that Biden has won the election. What they're doing is for no purpose other than power. The Republican Party is an organized conspiracy for the purposes of maintaining power for self-interest and the self-interest of its donor class. There is no fidelity to the American idea and ideal. There is no fidelity to the ideas of classical liberalism or American democracy. The whole fight in the history of the country has been who gets to participate in the American idea and ideal. In 2020, there's one side, and I'm proud to be on it, that says it's for everybody, for Black people, for Latinos, for gay people, for every American, right? It belongs to all of us. That's not what the other side believes. They believe that they should rule over the majority of the country by any means necessary. The debate that has been about, do we get to participate in this great experiment, has now become one whether we continue with this great experiment at all. That's why they are so radical. There has never been a force that has achieved power or is within reach of achieving power in the next election that's been so hostile to the history, the foundings, the essence and the entire meaning of the country, as is this Trump and Trumpist movement that has taken over lock, stock, and barrel the Republican Party, which is no longer dedicated to American democracy. It is dedicated to Trump and Trumpism and to his family, to defense of his indecencies, his autocratic manner, his corruptions, and apologists for the profound damage he has done.
You know, Tim Miller, one of the most not important, but interesting things is where the Fishers were. And I have no sympathy for people who jumped on the Trump train and then were sad to see it crash. But to see John Bolton and Bill Barr and Liz Cheney on the other side of what Steve Schmidt just described, the three of them, all right-wing conservatives, and I think I've gone through this before. I mean, John Bolton and Rick Grenell agree on all matters of foreign policy, but they're on the two sides of the fact and fiction divide around the result of the election. Bill Barr and Matt Schlapp, I'm sure, have the same judicial philosophy. They're on two irreconcilable sides of the fact fiction election result debate. Liz Cheney, who's as conservative as any House Republican elected serving right now, is on the other side of this fact fiction debate. It can never again be reconnected. I mean, the Republicans who have acknowledged the truth, they can't go back into normal polite society because none of them raised their hand when Trump was caging children or smearing and obstructing a federal investigation into whether his campaign colluded with Russia. But neither can they be at home in the fictional world of Donald Trump, can they?
Well, I think you're seeing that clearly. I don't know that Liz Cheney and John Bolton are seeing that clearly. I think good for them for saying and doing the right thing. I think they feel comfortable in where they are in their careers, that they can do this. I think that's a big reason why they're doing it, not to take anything away from them. I also think they're a little deluded about what the future of the Republican Party looks like, and they do believe they'll be able to reattach to it. And frankly, even though I don't think I will be a part of it, I hope so. I hope that there are some people who live in the realm of reality and who believe in basic democratic values and norms who do fight within the Republican Party. That's needed. It's not as Steve just laid out. It is a problem when one of the two major parties in the country have completely thrown in with autocratic values. And I just want to talk about this lawsuit that just came up in the last hour. 17 states, Nicole, 17 Republican attorney generals have signed a brief calling for the cancellation of the legal votes of people in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Georgia and Arizona. We've talked a lot about voter suppression and the problems with that. And I don't want to minimize that at all. It is a very serious problem. But what these guys are talking about is far past voter suppression. It's vote cancellation. It's taking people who were told how to participate in a free and fair election, who followed the rules, who cast the ballot for the person that they chose. And now these 17 attorney generals and Ted Cruz and the president of the United States want to take their vote away from them. They want to cancel that vote. I mean, that is literally Turkey and Belarus. That is anti-democratic. And you can fight before an election over, voter ID laws and voter suppression, and there are reasonable people on both sides of those debates, though many Republicans have acted unreasonably. But vote cancellation, this is unprecedented, and it's the president of the United States, Ted Cruz, and 17 Republican attorney generals that are pushing for it. To your point, how do you come back from that? How can you realign once you've supported something that grotesque?
And Jim Palmieri, the president-elect's position on the Republicans in the Senate is that he hopes to be able to govern in a bipartisan manner. I guess my question for you is how does one go about doing that? Do you focus on the 6 who've acknowledged the results of the election?
I think you focus on the 6 that acknowledge the results of the election, and you focus on the percentage of the Republican Party. Vast majority of them have said that they thought that the election results are not credible, but some part of the party believes that Joe Biden was elected president. I think you start there, and I think that you try to embed in everything you do a semblance of bipartisanship, a semblance of reality, right? So in doing the vaccines, find people who are willing to take the vaccines first. I know that George Bush has said he would, Bill Clinton said he will, Barack Obama. Other people that can appeal to the supporters of President Trump, that their involvement in this process will be meaningful to them. If you're trying to do infrastructure, do it in a way that is reaching out to different parts of the country to try to get some buy-in there. I think even like without being partisan, you can find ways to embed in everything that Biden does to be much more open, to be transparent, and to be reaching out to the parts of the country that didn't vote for him. One leader did a lot of damage to just, the credibility of facts and putting people in silos. It's not just on Biden, it's on all of us. But I think Biden can embed in everything he does, from how he inaugurates, how he does the inaugural, to how he pursues policy, how he does the vaccine, can be much more inclusive. And I think that, if I were working for him, that's why I would be thinking about how can you start to build back bridges to people who have different views than you, and sometimes even, a different set of facts. And, he has tools from every day he does to do that.
And I think to your point, Jen, Steve, you've said that President-elect Biden should go straight to the public to build public support and use that as pressure on elected Republicans. But, Tim spent a week watching Newsmax and OWN and wherever else the Trump folks went when Trump told them to stop watching Fox. I mean, are they still susceptible to pressure, or are we sort of a few train stops past that?
No, we're past it. Look, again, we're in a fight now between an autocratic movement and a democratic movement. And the only way to win a fight is either through submission or through exhaustion. And here's the deal. And this is what I would say to the people that Tim described as deluded. They are in a party that has let out of the underworld a mixture of conspiracy theorists, white nationalists, white supremacists, militia groups, and all of those people are part of their Trump coalition. Right? They are in the mainstream of the Trump coalition. Groups like the Lincoln Project, our view is very simple. There is no compromise with these people. They must be driven back into the underworld of American politics. They have no place at the table. And that any political party that wishes to associate with them has to become so toxic that they have no chance of winning elections. And it's going to be the work of many elections. But this odious cast of characters has to be brought to electoral submission over these next years. At the same time, the side that believes in democracy cannot be brought to exhaustion, cannot be worn out in this fight. Everybody who's on the side of democracy, who believes in elections, from AOC to the Lincoln Project, everybody in between, Republican voters, the group that Tim, I'm tripping over right now, and I apologize, but all of us, right? If we don't hold together, right? If we don't stay together on the fundamental question, we can lose the country to an autocratic party in the next presidential election. This is all out in the open right now. You can't put this back in the box, what happened this month. You know exactly who is faithless to their constitutional oaths. And it's not a big stretch to say this. If you won't acknowledge the result of this election, if you're pretending that Donald Trump had the election stolen from him, on no planet are you faithful, Senator, member of Congress, Mr. Mayor, Mr. State Legislature, are you faithful to your oath? You've spoiled it. You've wrecked it. You have desecrated it. And this is why this is such a tragic error, because we've never seen such cowardness and such faithless.
They should be charged for desertion. Desertion is what they should be charged for, because they have deserted the republic.
Towards the American experiment, towards the American Republic, as we do in this hour right now.
And Jim Palmieri, I mean, just to end on what's happening right now, it's Republicans who are being targeted by this movement that Steve describes. It's Republican election officials in Georgia who are standing up and saying, quote, someone's going to get shot. It's Republicans who helped screw, I've said this before, the arms and legs onto Frankenstein, and now they're aghast that he's a monster. I mean, what does a president-elect Biden do about the concerns from Republican elected officials that this could lead to violence very easily and very quickly?
I think it has to be in solidarity with them, and it's not surprising that when you see the repercussions really take hold in the Republican Party, that it's happening at the local level, right? That it's happening with county officials, mayors, governors. They're the ones that have to deal with with reality in a way that you were sort of shielded from that in Congress. And I think that you do start there with those Republican officials that just are willing to deal in reality and be faithful to the democracy, and find. Biden has just so much on his shoulders. It's going to be very hard 4 years, but find issues that can be apolitical. Certainly, the vaccine has not been to date, but I think that alone, if you do that program right, not only is it the health of the country depend upon it, the economy depend upon it, but that alone could go a long way to restoring credibility, people believing in government, its ability to do big things, and its ability to be faithful to the health and safety of the American people. So you can imagine how, over the course of the next 4 years, Biden will have a lot of those opportunities, and either will have some support enough from the Republican side, or he won't. But I feel hopeful about that. Not from a vast majority of Congress, but the enough supporters of President Trump to keep this together for Biden over the course of the next 4 years.
We will end on your optimism and your hope. Jen Palmieri and Steve Schmidt, thank you both for starting us off. Tim is sticking around. When we come back, it's the Western Front in the war against truth. A Republican civil war has broken out in Arizona in the wake of Donald Trump's loss in that state. We'll talk to a reporter there as Republicans increasingly turn on one another. Plus, now that Joe Biden's win in Georgia is official for a third time, officials there are trying to make it harder for people to vote ahead of the all-important runoff elections that could determine control of the Senate. And as President-elect Biden vows to take on the virus with science, how will he confront scenes like this? An angry mob protesting the wearing of masks. Deadline White House continues after a quick break. Don't go anywhere.
When dealing with church matters, such as I've been dealing with now since I've come back to Tennessee in 2014, by them ostracizing me, and treating me the way that they have treated me, goes beyond dereliction of duty. You see, we are duty bound as Christians. No matter if I agree with you or disagree with you, I still have to love your soul. I still have to love your inner being, your aurora, towards who you really are. Even though I may think that you're out in left field, even though I may think that you're totally upside down in your thinking, I still have to love you. And for these churches to demonstrate by turning on the founder of the Windmill Ministries is not demonstrating that in which what the Heavenly Father orchestrated his Son to teach us to do. We are supposed to live by example. We're not supposed to act like a bunch of heathens. It's the same way with the Republican Party. They have walked away from the authenticity of who the Republic Party is supposed to be to begin with. And to me, and I would tell the same thing to any judge here in Weakley County, especially Tommy Moore, or any other prosecuting attorney, or any other sheriff, or chief of police, or deputy, or whoever's in charge. There reaches a point where it's no longer considered dereliction of duty. Now, it's basically treason. How do you establish treason? By desertion. Whenever you're no longer fulfilling that in which what you're supposed to be fulfilling, you're no longer just breaking the bylaws of what you swore that you was going to withhold pertaining to being a Republican. Now, you've reached a point that you're deserting from that organization. It's the same way with these churches around here that decided that they was going to create this uproar. Randy Brundage, the mayor of Martin, and other people around here that decided, well, we'll teach him, we'll just railroad him right on out of here to the point that he won't be welcome in any of these churches. It doesn't matter if it's Baptist, Presbyterian, Methodist, Church of Christ, Church of God, Mormons, Jehovah Witness, Lutherans. We'll just kick him out of all of them. Well, whenever you're doing that, you're violating the primary principles of what the Bible says to begin with, which is to love your enemies and to do good to them that despitefully use you and misuse you. You're automatically in violation of the gospel, of the laws of the gospel. There are certain laws about the gospel that are no longer considered recommendations. They are now looked upon as being requirements. We are required to love he who we don't necessarily agree with. We are required to love our enemies. Though we don't love what our enemies have done or what our enemies is doing, we still love our enemies, according to the Bible. We love their intellectual soul, their inner being. We don't wish for nobody to go to hell. Hell was a place that was designed originally for the devil and the angels that fell with the devil. But whenever these churches start demonstrating the very opposite of what the Bible teaches, then you have to look at credibility issues towards, okay, if you go back to the original origin, which is the Bible, pertaining to our teachings, who is out of order here? Is it the founder of the Windmill Ministries that has tried and tried and tried to start a revolution, to start a revival, to start a movement for the past 30-something years that to this day I'm still in limbo about? I'm going to use the word limbo because it's a tag on from being basically a standoff. Limbo. Standoff. You can look at what's going on right now, which I didn't know nothing about this because I've been outside dibbling around with trees and lights and putting up decorations and stuff like that. But I come inside, and I look at this, and I'm thinking, you know what? The deadline has done been made. The deadline was yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, of how that the electric boats was going to be cast. Now, all of a sudden, I'm hearing all this other stuff about, what was it, 17 or 18 senators? 17 states filed brief in Supreme Court in support of TX. I don't know what that means. I'm sure it's got something to do with something, lawsuit to overthrow Biden's wins in swing states. I've heard some crazy, crazy tales. I've seen some crazy, crazy tales. I've heard about other banana republic that does some really weird stuff in trying to go up against the will of their people. But I never would have thought that I would have seen it here in America to the extent that we're seeing it today. This is not dereliction of duty. And if somebody wants to put it in that category, they're putting it in the wrong category. This should be put into the category of desertion. Desertion should be put into the category of treason. They are going up against their very own doctrine. It's kind of like whenever Secret Service, Homeland Security wanted to pull me over in Madison County in front of the old water hole that used to be a nightclub that evolved off into being Tremors, but pulled me over and confiscated the sword that was anointed, the sword symbolizing peace on earth, towards intervening in a ministry. The United States government, the federal as well as the local government or the state government, is not supposed to do this pertaining to religion. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion. That means if I want to go out here and grab up a bag of manure and pray to it and call it my God, in which I don't. I'm just using this for a hypothetical. But if I wanted to grab up a bag of manure, put it in a nice pot, put a bow around it, even though it smelt bad, and tell everybody that this was God, and I pray to God because this is the God that I believe that's going to transfigurate and save society. If I do this, according to our Constitution, there is nothing that they can do about it. But yet no, they intervened. They confiscated a sword from the ministry. You wonder how come things has gone haywire? It's because the country, certain people in the country have gone haywire. The country itself is still the same, based around our founders and based upon how that we ever was created as a nation to begin with. You know, I used to make references to my grandmother before she passed away. Grandmother, the world's gone crazy. The world's gone crazy. She used to look at me. She said, Dennis, nothing's wrong with the world. It's the people in the world that's gone crazy. And what she's saying was correct. It wasn't the world. The trees still stand straight. The rocks are still the rocks. The ocean is still the ocean. The lakes are still the lakes. The mountains are still the mountains. The valleys are still the valleys. There's nothing wrong with the world other than what we're doing to the world, pertaining to creating all these gases and all these poisonous things going up into the atmosphere that is affecting our atmosphere to the point that our weather's gone bonkers. You know, just today, I had a friend out here helping me move some things around. And I said, you know, because he bragged about it being like 62 degrees today. He said, man, weather sure is nice today. Today's a good day to just get out here and just enjoy the weather, isn't it? I said, you know what? You should be as concerned about the weather being like it is right now in northern Tennessee as you would be of an ongoing hurricane. He goes, what do you mean by that? I go, because this is not normal. It's abnormal. I go, whenever I moved to Tennessee in the 60s, in the late 60s, whenever it got cold right after Halloween, it stayed cold. Every now and then it'd warm up a little bit, but the ground stayed froze for about 3 or 4 months. We are no longer subject to that type of rule here in America pertaining to our weather. And I'm beginning to wonder if we're not under a different rule in regards to how the Republicans are now fighting against this election that was just as fair and is just as legal. And I'm not saying that there wasn't some irregularities. I'm sure there was just as many irregularities on one side as it was the other, towards dead people voting or somebody trying to vote twice that they shouldn't have voted. But it wasn't enough to make the difference of about a $6 million spread. $5 or $6 million spread. 5 or 6 million more people voted for Biden. And just so happens Biden got the right states this time instead of Trump. And because of it, the Republicans are now sore losers. And now they want to sue. They want to moan. They want to groan. They want a bellyache. They want to say how much the election was stolen. They want to do this. They want to do that. And it's one thing to moan and groan and do that. But what they have done today towards bringing forth a lawsuit, this isn't moaning and groaning. This is an actual movement that has begun. And in this movement that has begun goes beyond dereliction of duty. This is treason. Treason in the first degree towards them being deserters and deserting what the laws says about a free, fair election. They are deviating from the original concept, going back to its original origin of what each party is expected to do. And once more, if you're not inclined of losing, you're not playing by the same set of rules. You're deserting away from those rules. And because you're deserting away from these rules, as far as I'm concerned, I'm like the Steve guy on the far right that was talking. What they have done today will damage them for probably the next at least 2 elections, if not longer, towards just exactly how low will the Republican Party go in regards to not validating the rules of the Republic. Everybody knows the rules. Everybody knows the rules. Everybody knows that there can't be 2 winners. Everybody knows that there can't be 2 losers. When you enter into a football game, do you expect that there's going to be 2 winners? When you enter into a basketball game, do you expect that there's going to be 2 winners? Every now and then, it might be a tie. So does that mean we're supposed to have 2 presidents instead of 1? Does that mean that President Trump is going to serve on the East Coast and President Biden's going to serve on the West Coast? Having the Mississippi River, splitting it right down the middle? I mean, I don't know. This is the most bizarre, unorthodox thing that I have seen in 59 years of me living in America. This has got this tops all tops. This goes, the blows does not get any lower than this. It's just like all these churches around here that banded me, the founder of the Windmill Ministries, from not being allowed to walk into their sanctuary and sit down either as a visitor or a guest. In addition to what Central Baptist Church done in Martin, Tennessee, towards bringing in, I guess, about 3 cop cars whenever they decided that they was going to judge me because of the works that I was doing beyond the boundaries of Central Baptist Church. One of the deacons even questioned me and said, well, they all know who you are and where you go to church at, Juby. I said, how are they going to know that? I don't walk around with a platel telling everybody that I go to Central Baptist Church. I don't walk around wearing t-shirts that says I'm a member of the Central Baptist Church organization in Martin, Tennessee. How are they going to know that I'm associated with y'all? Their response was, well, they'll know. They'll know that you're part of our family, our church family out here. And because you're out here putting out stuff that we don't agree with, we want you out of here. We want you gone. Now, granted, each church has their rights towards who they allow or don't allow onto their property from a man-made law perspective. And granted, if Central Baptist Church could validate me breaking God's laws towards me living in common law, drinking, stealing, just being just a low-life, no good for nothing human being, which would be contrary to the teachings of Christ, if they could validate that some way or another, then they would have a leg to stand on towards saying, we don't want him in our church. Or if I had done something on the premises, or in the premises, or even to one of their members at Central Baptist Church, they couldn't do neither. No disruptions had occurred at Central Baptist Church. I had not had no type of interference with any of the other congregation there that was going to Central Baptist Church. But yet and all, the deacon comes to me with 2 cops in behind him and my brother in the same room, and us recording this. We was recording this. It was being recorded. And that was one reason why I think he got so mad, was because I was recording it. I'm talking about my Sunday school teacher. During the time that I went to Central Baptist Church, which was give or take about a year, was trying to teach us how to interpret the Bible towards good leadership. Okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's nothing wrong with me getting out telling others how that I have interpreted the Bible, especially if I'm doing it beyond the premises of Central Baptist Church. And just because my interpretation is a little bit different than Central Baptist interpretation or First Baptist there in Martin, Tennessee's interpretation, all of a sudden you're going to boycott me? All of a sudden, you're going to demonize me? All of a sudden, you're going to dehumanize me by telling me that I do not have a right to worship in any of your sanctuaries because I've understood the Bible differently? That is a violation in and of itself about how we, us, the church in general, is supposed to respond to people that you disagree with. In other words, we're supposed to be able to agree to disagree, but at the same time, just because we disagree with each other, don't mean that we're going to have a knockdown, drag-out fight. In other words, we're not supposed to get out in the streets and go to swinging and beating one another up because I don't see things exactly like she says that she sees things, or vice versa. She don't see things exactly how I see things. I have been punished. And as far as I am concerned, the Republican Party is trying to punish we the people because the Republican Party don't agree for some reason, I don't know why, but they don't agree with how that this election has unfolded. And because of it, now they're asking for it to be pulled. This, my friends, is not only unconstitutional. This, my friends, is not only a dereliction of duty, but this, my friends, goes beyond dereliction of duty. These people are traitors. They're betrayers and traitors to their own origin of their own party. And it's really sad when you see something as obvious as this going on, but it's still going on as long as it has went on. I weep and I cry. I weep and I cry because my heart has been broken, not just over the way my brothers and sisters in the Lord that claim to be in the Lord have treated me, but I weep and I cry over seeing stuff like this happening that I know violates the very principles that our forefathers and that our founders, the builders, this violates every principle that they have ever tried to distribute out to the people pertaining to a free, fair, open election, a democracy. That's about all I got to say about it for right now, because it's made my blood boil. It's made my blood boil red, and it's hurt me, and I'm disturbed about it. Because this is not supposed to be going on in America, not only politically, but it's not supposed to be going on in America spiritually, pertaining to God's holy, righteous churches. Good luck to all of us, and shalom. As I travel through this pilgrim land, there is a friend who walks with me. As I kneel in prayer, I hope to meet you there. Precious Jesus, hold my hand. As I kneel in prayer, I hope to meet you there. Precious Jesus, hold my hand.